Sure thing. Let me go ahead and jump right to I don't want to bury the lead. I'm running for school board because I believe I have the skills and talents that can contribute to the current board membership. I have a wide variety of backgrounds, and I'm also, of course, running for school board. I think anybody running for school board should care about students and teachers, and I have a long track record of volunteering with the schools, and that's the main reason I'm running for school board is that I can contribute to the board, I want to run for the board, and I have a strong interest in public education. A little bit about me. I grew up in a military family, so I've bounced around the country quite a bit, lived in probably 10 different states, lived overseas a couple times. I've been in Hays for 17 years. I work at Fort Hays State University. I teach in the sociology department and work in the Docking Institute of Public Affairs. In fact, since June, I've been the director of the Docking Institute of Public Affairs. All 4 of my kids have gone through the US State 489 school system. My oldest daughter actually is a senior this year, so she'll be graduating in spring from Hays High. They started at O'Laughlin, went to Felton Middle School / Hays Middle School, depending on the year, and then Hays High. And I have a lot of, mentioned before, a lot of volunteer experience at the schools. If I could state those real quickly, started off at working on the O'Laughlin Site Council, and then right now I'm a member of the Hays High Site Council. I've been doing that for about 4 years. And I'm currently also a member of the District Site Council, which is a new thing that was implemented and mandated by the state, the new accreditation process. And that started in March. And so I've been a member of the USD 49 District Site Council since March. As well as tons of experience. I can go on and on about my membership in various booster clubs at Hays High. I think that there's a few things that jump out at me. One is engagement. Because of the work I already do in the school district as a volunteer, through the booster clubs, through the site councils, but also through my work at the Docking Institute. I'm a member of the Hays Chamber of Commerce and the Western Kansas Regional Economic Development Alliance, as well as other groups. So I already am engaged in the community quite a bit. I think it's important for school board members to be engaged. Now, of course, being a member of the school board is civic engagement, but I feel that board members should be out in the community attending sporting events, musical events, other kind of events that the schools put on, as well as other activities in the district and in Hays to interact with folks and get feedback from folks. I think that's very important. The other thing is commitment. I've already committed to the job. I filed on time, and I've been preparing myself for the job. I know what the KISA accreditation program is all about, process is all about. I know what the ROSE capacities are. I've been attending board meetings for almost 2 years on a regular basis. And so not only do I think I can bring engagement to the board, but also commitment. There's a lot more to learn, but I believe I can start off running instead of having to learn too much. The third thing is temperament. Now, my niece actually teased me about this. Sounds like I'm marketing a dog, temperament, right? But what I'm trying to get at there is that we need people on the board with cool heads. I'm a researcher by training, so basically I gather as much information as possible, assess that information, and then make a decision in a calm and cool way, hopefully. I think that's very important for anybody in leadership and in a civic office, public office. But I think that a cool head is needed on the board. First of all, it's important that board members know that we're not administrators. We hire an administrator. In fact, probably the most important job that a school board can do is to hire a good, solid administrator, which I think we've done with John Thiessen. But we're not administrators. In fact, we as board members don't hold individual power. We only hold power and authority as a member of the board. So, for example, it would be very inappropriate for a school board member to go down to a school to try to tell a principal how to operate the school, or into a classroom to tell a teacher how to operate a classroom. Our role is advisory to the district. Our role is also to oversee the budget process. And as I mentioned before, accreditation is coming up, so it would be very important for the board members to be involved in that accreditation process and to help the district with that accreditation. So it's really two different things. We have the administration that administers the school district and the board that oversees and does, of course, a very important part is to oversee the budget and approve the budget. But we're not put in office to administer the schools. That really depends on if there's any requirements with the funding. So for example, if the funding needs to go to payroll or to hiring more teachers, then let's do that. Let's increase pay, and let's review the process of increasing pay, and let's hire more teachers if necessary. If the money is attached to facilities, then let's use that money to improve our facilities, regardless of whether a bond passes or not. That's probably another issue we're going to discuss. There's things that the bond can't cover and doesn't cover. So maybe some of that money could be used for facility improvements not covered by a bond, and if the bond doesn't pass, then we can use that money for facilities. The third thing is if that money can be used for programming. Maybe there are programs that are currently taking place in the schools. We can possibly expand those and improve those with some of those funds. So what I've mentioned is teachers, students, and facilities. I don't believe there's a need to improve the administration of the school district. I haven't heard any word of the need for additional employees at the district level. If there are, that's an issue to address, but for the most part, teachers, students, and facilities. I do support the school bond. I have been a member of the vision team. A little background information, there were 3 teams that came together. We had members of the community, we're called the vision team. There was another team of teachers and another team of administrators. They all came up with their own plans, and then we all got together and took all those plans and put them into one big plan and presented that to the board. So now it's up to the board to decide whether or not they approve that plan. And it looks like they have, so it's going to be on the ballot. I do support the plan because it's a very good, solid plan. I've been involved with it for months, developing that plan. Now, one of the first questions we asked when we got together as a citizen group was, do we need a bond? So it's not as if we got together trying to figure out some way to get a bond passed. It was first, do we need a bond? So we looked at the schools, we looked at the facilities, and we decided, yes, improvements needed to be made. Here's an example. Hayes High is the most recent school that's been built, and it was built 30 or 40 years ago. And we haven't passed a major bond since that time. And that's okay, because 30 or 40 years, that sounds like a good time span for a building to be used. Now we need to put some money into improving that school building. We're not replacing it. We are planning to replace some of the buildings that are 70 years old and 90 years old. I think it's about time for that. But if we pass another bond now, it's a 30-year bond, that means the school buildings that are built now, the elementary schools that are built, they can last for another 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So I think it's about time that we do this. The other part of the school bond issue is that it's totally different than the last bond. I know sometimes you read in the paper that it's just a rehash of the old bond. It's really not. The other bond push came about from a facilities needs assessment that was produced 10 or 12 years ago. And it sat on the shelf, and every 3 or 4 years the school board and the district would reevaluate it, look at it. At some point, the school board decided to push that facility needs assessment as a bond initiative. It's very different than the current plan, which came from citizens and teachers and administrators. It's also very important to point out it's different because the first bond that they tried to pass tried to preserve every single building. And I can understand the desire to hang on to old buildings, but Lincoln, for example, was built before we had school lunch programs in place. So the school cafeteria is down in the basement next to the sump pump, which takes the sewage water out of the building. So anyway, it's not the best place for a cafeteria. So I think it's time for us to realize as a community that it's time for a change. We need to build a couple new schools, get rid of a couple old schools, add on to and refurbish part of Hayes High, because it's still a good building, add on to Roosevelt, another great building, and add on to Hayes Middle School. But it's time for us to let Wilson go and to let Lincoln go and replace them with new schools. There is already plans in place in case that happens. In fact, there's plans right now for facility improvements whether the bond passes or not. For example, Hayes High is already changing their lighting from standard lighting to LED, and I've heard reports that that's saving that school building $3,000 a month just on lighting costs, or electricity costs for lighting. The other plan is to replace the air conditioning and heating system in the school. That's going to take place whether or not a bond passes. Now, if a bond passes, then they will coordinate with the other construction. The folks replacing that, the heating and air conditioning system will coordinate with the other contractors to make sure that everything is done correctly with the new additions to it. If the bond, so some of this stuff is taking place no matter what. The bond doesn't pass, still going to continue. Bond does pass, they will still continue, and more things will happen. The board will have to reassess things if the bond does not pass. There'll be some more discussion. There'll probably be some more teams of citizens brought together to see what we can do now, because I think we're at a point that something has to be done. We can't continue with Lincoln and Wilson the way they are. The demographics show that the elementary schools are full, and younger kids, a large population of younger kids are going to be entering the elementary schools soon. And then those kids are going to have to move into the middle school and then high school. So there's going to be a bubble of population that we're going to have to account for. So we're going to have to do something. What we do if the bond passes is to reassess and to see what we need to do. It can't be, well, let's give up on this issue. These decisions have to be made. Changes have to be made. It just depends on how we do it if the bond doesn't pass. That's a very good point. I mentioned accreditation before. A big change is coming, already has started, but big change is coming in the accreditation process. Part of that is to, again, I think a lot of folks don't realize that the school district is held accountable for, or is measured by, the success of people after they leave school. So before they get to kindergarten, pre-K is something they're measured on, and post-graduation is something they're measured on. So they already have things in place. They already are working with counselors, and the high school has already put in place career readiness classes and college preparatory classes. I know that the district is working with Fort Hays State, for example, to better prepare students for college, and working with employers to better prepare students for the workplace. I work with a lot of employers through my job at the Docking Institute, and one thing I hear often is the need for soft skills, meaning as new employees come into the workplace, they don't seem to have the skills to work in teams, to work on group projects, to plan projects ahead of time and then complete them, to even work as individuals on projects. There's a lot of issues with personal interaction, issues with following direction. So these are things that employers are asking for. And this actually ties back to the bond initiative. One of the terms we hear a lot is right sizing of classrooms. What does that mean? It basically means the classrooms that were built 50, 70, 90 years ago are small and designed for lecturing. So students all sit in rows and they're lectured to by this teacher. Well, the best way to develop soft skills that the employers are looking for is to have more space in the classroom, not more students, but more space in the classroom that allows for some lecturing to take place, but also some group collaboration on projects. So that's one reason to pass the bond, is to get right-sized classrooms so students can develop those soft skills, as we call them, that will help employers. Again, that's a good point. The district is measured on how well students enter the school system. They're not measured just by when kids are first dropped off at kindergarten and leave at 12th grade. They're measured as students are prepared for school. The district is already putting plans in place. They already have activities in place. They're reaching out to preschools and letting the preschool teachers know what is required of kindergartners, and so they're helping them develop those skills before they get to kindergarten. It's an interesting fact that the largest gap between skill level is at the kindergarten level. Kindergarten teachers have students that can already read or almost already read, are already ready for the second grade almost, but they also have students that come in that don't even know how to hold a book properly and are not potty trained. So kindergarten is a very vital year for kids. And the district is already working on improving the skill level of kids before they get to kindergarten. But more can be done, reaching out to other preschools, reaching out to daycares and these kind of organizations to help those facilities prepare students better for kindergarten. First of all, the board and the district have done a very good job of getting their financial house in order. So after a couple of years of very hard work, the finances are in pretty good shape. But that's a goal to keep pursuing. Make sure the school district is on firm financial footing. Secondly, gearing up for the accreditation process. It's much different than other accreditation processes. In the past, the state would accredit different buildings, and if they were checked off as accredited, then they could teach students, right? That will continue. Each school building will be accredited as before, or will need to pass accreditation as before, but the new accreditation process is to accredit the districts as a whole, too. So the school district and the school board are gearing up. It's the KISA program that is being put in place, and there's the ROSE capacities that they're following that sort of fit into that as well. And so the district is already working on these issues, but that's another goal of mine, to make sure that the board helps the district in any way we can to make sure that the district as a whole is accredited. Okay, again, I want to make sure the board stays on, the district stays on firm financial footing. Another goal is to help the district with the accreditation process. Another goal of mine is engagement, getting out in the community, or continuing to get out in the community and meet with people and talk to people, and let them know that I represent citizens on the board. I'm elected by folks to be on the board. I represent citizens on the board, so I want to be engaged in the larger community so that they understand that the board does listen to them. The other goal is to do what I can as a board member to promote whatever is in the best interest of students and teachers. That's really the core of why I'm on the board, is to make sure that we continue educating our students the best way we can.